Hello and welcome everybody to Monday with Mandy. My name is Mandy Tice. I am the director of the School of Atelier Arts. I am an atelier trained instructor, which means that I have been trained to draw and paint realistically, and I teach others how to paint and draw realistically. If you've ever thought that you just didn't have it or you weren't capable of painting, in realism, you're wrong. You can. You just need access to the right instructor. And that's what I hope to provide for you today and every Monday in these live streams is access to information that largely fell out of favor over the last century. And now that you have access to through online ateliers like the School of Atelier Arts. So welcome everybody. Please give me a hello in the chat. I love hearing from you. Let me know where you're coming in from. We did start streaming to Discord as well. So for those of you there, welcome. And we're going to jump into it. So last week we started lace painting and we talked about how lace was largely about shape and being within an environment, right? Sometimes lace emerges because of what we paint around it. So we started working in this area here, but we're still missing so much information around the lace. It's going to take us a little bit of time to continue providing the context of the lace. And then because we did this last week, I'm hoping to get to a second pass on some of the area we did last week so you can see how you build it up over time. So we have a lot to do and not very much time. Thank you all for joining us today. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the School of Atelier Arts. You want to make sure to get all of our best resources. You don't want to miss anything. And I also strongly encourage you to join our School of Atelier Arts newsletter. We send out all our best resources, classes, information, articles, all the very good stuff. There's a reason why it's so wildly popular. You don't want to miss out. And there's a link in the description here that you can join. Okay, so we're going to kind of jump into it. I am going to be doing some color mixing a little bit more quickly. If you are unsure about how I'm mixing those colors or you want more information, 2 Mondays ago, I went into a deep dive into how to mix colors. So I encourage you to check that out as well if you want a deep dive into the color mixing. I'm going to be focusing today on getting the lace in because that's the point of our project. We want to make sure that we are learning lace and doing all the good things with the lace. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and grab my palette. All right, so just a little reminder on the palette, we have a, I always lay out my colors from lightest in value to darkest. This is a titanium white, a cad yellow, cad red, ultramarine blue, and an ivory black. So a really simple palette. I like to keep things chromatic on my palette because it's always easier to neutralize. You can't make a yellow more chromatic than what you have on your palette, right? So some people, especially when they're doing an old master copy, they prefer a yellow ochre or something like that, which is fine. This is a pretty neutralized painting overall. I don't really need this level of chroma on my palette, but I like to be consistent. I like to spend the least amount of time wondering which colors I should put on my palette and the most amount of time painting on my stillet or my master copy here. So I see some of you trickling in. Good morning, Miss Ellen. Happy to see you back from Pennsylvania. All right. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to create context for this part of the lace because this back part is still reading as lace, but if you look carefully, it's a completely different color. It is treated very differently. It has much softer edges. There's almost a gradient from the skin tone into the lace. The lace is somewhat transparent because it has all those little holes in it. And, this reads as it has all the little holes in it, even though it doesn't have little holes in it, right? That is creating the illusion through a soft edge, all right? And also because it's slightly transparent, it's picking up on other colors around it much more easily and what's under it much more easily. So we have this really interesting concept here where it's almost a gradient from the skin tone into the lace, which is giving us that slightly transparent lacy-like feel. So I wanted to work in this area today. Again, we're going to work on the surrounding colors and then the lace. And then hopefully we'll get a chance to put a second pass on the area we worked on over here. But do you see how I just am missing too much information to really go into this yet? You want to develop your painting kind of at the same rate. You don't want to have a really highly finished area next to a completely white canvas because the white canvas is really distorting your ability to see. Okay, so in order to see well, you want to make sure that you can have as much information down. You'll have better information to work from. You'll get a less distorted perception of what you're painting. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a couple colors here, kind of this darker green neutralized color, the skin tone here, and we're gonna work in this area a bit. So this part of the fabric, the dark fabric underneath, is a neutralized green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix green. I'm going to rotate you guys so that you see better here. All right, so I'm going to mix a green with my yellow and my blue. And then to neutralize it, the opposite of green on the color wheel is red. So I'm going to add quite a bit of red. And I need quite a bit of paint as well. So I'm going to mix a bigger pile here. All right, so mixing my green, then when I want to neutralize it, there's lots of ways to neutralize it. One way is to add the opposite on the color wheel, which would be red. Now, whenever you add red, it's tempting to be like, oh my gosh, I just turned my whole pile red. But keep in mind that your brain thinks whatever color comes next, right? Whatever color you're adding to it is what your brain is going to think of, but it's actually not that red. It might be a touch red. It's leaning orange. But when I add black, which is a dark neutralized blue, it's going to skew it more green because it's really a dark blue, and it's also going to darken my value. So it's going to take us back into the green land. This is still feeling like a yellowy green, and this is a bluey neutralized green underneath here. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue. Not too much. The blue is more potent than many of the other colors on the palette. So if you add too much, it skews it really fast. And the black is also neutralizing it because the black isn't a chromatic blue. It's a very neutralized blue. So I'm going to add some more black because we need to get the value down. Okay, so we're approaching, it still needs to be cooled down a little bit, lean a little bit towards blue. We're getting closer. It needs a little bit more red in it. It's slightly more neutralized. Okay, I don't want to spend all the time mixing the colors because we have a lot to do with our painting today. So I'm just going to quickly finish this part up. And like with most things, you never know if the color is what you want it to be until it's laid on the canvas. That's the ultimate test. You want to use a brush that's proportionate to the space that you're working on. I'm going to use this kind of medium brush here. And I'm going to work on kind of this darker area first and then work into the light. So I'm going to kind of work under here, which is kind of reddy black. Almost never are your blacks going to be just a pure black out of a tube. It's so cold compared to what most people painted with. So almost always you're going to, not always warm it up, but rarely is it exactly out of the tube. So instead of thinking of it as black, think of it as a very dark color. And what color could that very dark color possibly be? All right, so not a pure black. Has a little bit of oomph in it. This needs a tiny bit more orange. You know, sometimes people think I'm crazy and I'm like, oh, we need some orange in the green, right? But when you start atelier training and really mixing your colors, you'll start saying crazy things like that. Like, oh, I need more orange in my green. For those of you who are joining us today that might be new to atelier training, Atelier training is just the way that artists were trained until about 100 years ago when it fell out of favor. And today it's kind of become the countercultural movement in art to be able to paint realistically. And you can still learn these skills at places called ateliers. And we, of course, run the School of Atelier Arts. It's an online atelier where students meet online a couple times a week, and we train them in these skills. So if you're looking for a more consistent training other than watching YouTube videos, I encourage you to check out our school. Our students make great progress in that class. All right, this is getting a little dark. It has just a touch of white in it. It's a little bit grayed out. And Jessica's saying, this is cool. You really know your stuff. Thank you, Jessica. I hope I do. I trained full-time in Atelier for many years. I trained for 4 years in Seattle. I trained for almost a year in Salt Lake City. I moved to New Hampshire to train for another year or so. And then, of course, workshops and whatnot in between there. So, but you know what, I really wanted to make an opportunity. I started the School of Atelier Arts because I had to move across the country to get this training. And with the technology that we have today, it's amazing what students can learn, via video instruction. In our online boot camp, students will upload pictures and I can draw on them with my iPad. And I'm astonished at, how in just a few years we went from I had to move across the country to get the training to, hey, for like half the cost, you guys can train online and learn this content. I think that's so cool and neat that we live in this really unique and special time. But I'm happy you're with us today. Welcome, welcome. Yes, so there's some comments in the chat about, the digital side of things is being utilized now. And, some people think that there's a war between traditional painting and, AI and things like that. But I don't really see it as that different from Photoshop, right? Like, put good stuff in, you'll get good stuff out. But where are you going to get the good stuff without the artists, right? You still need the original content. And definitely with the online training, you can save so much money compared to, moving across. I quit my job. I was a school teacher. I quit my job, moved across the country, went back to waitressing, right? But now you can just like sign up for $500 a month and learn, on your own time at your own house and keep your job. Like, that's pretty amazing to me. Sometimes I get jealous of my students that that's a choice for them. Okay. All right, this got a little chalky and it kind of lost its nice color underneath. There's just a little bit of warmth underneath here. And a little bit of darkness. I lost the value. Every color has a value, a chroma, and a hue. And sometimes when we're adjusting one of those three things, we lose one of the other two. So it's really important, as we're working, that we maintain our idea of the value, the chroma, and the hue. Okay, so all right, so I'm basically working around the lace first because I want to give the lace context. But I also have this dark in here, and I didn't do a good job of drawing in here. This is actually coming much lower, and it has some fatness to it. Drawing errors are painting errors, right? Sometimes people are like, oh, I want to draw first or I want to paint first, but they're not different things. You can't paint without drawing, and you can't draw without, well, I guess you can draw without painting, but you certainly can't paint without drawing. It is drawing. Okay, so we are just kind of emphasizing also, some of this was painted a long time ago. I've been using this as a demo for students for various reasons through the, since I started it. And sometimes when the paint is really, really dry, it does something called sinking in. And so it looks a little chalkier than the way it's actually painted. Okay. Have some darkness. We also have a little bit of warmth, kind of an orangey warmth back up here. You see how this actually is like almost a orange? It's more vibrant than you anticipate. Of course, it's relative. It's still, you know, kind of a neutralized orange, but still, it's there. We can give it a little bit of emphasis. And a little bit of lightness. White will also neutralize slightly because it's a really, ivory white. Titanium white is a really light value blue. And so it will also neutralize and cool your colors every time you add that particular white to your canvas. And there's kind of a soft edge. Here. All right, just kind of letting it dissolve into the background. This isn't that important. Students are often putting the emphasis on the wrong part. What's cool is the lace, right? That's what's emphasized. So everything else is de-emphasized. It has soft edges. It's made less important than it is. This is actually too light right here. So, you know, be mindful what's actually important and what's not, and don't make anything important that isn't actually important. The lace in this case is what's going to be our important part. And we want to save, you know, our best thinking for the good parts. I can clarify in here a little bit. You know, there's you know, this was painted with a dry brush by the original artist. This is a Velázquez master copy. And, you know, so when we're doing direct painting, which is what we're doing right now, we need to make a choice of where one ends and the other begins, because we can't do the dry brush until the underpainting is dry. So something to be aware of. Okay, I'm also going to do this little triangle of flesh here, again, because it's just informing so much of both sides of our lace here. Yeah, sinking in is a real problem, especially when you're a beginner painter, right? Because we tend to be slower when we're painting in the beginning. Doing a master copy is actually the first project you do when you join the Atelier Painting Bootcamp, and I take you through every part of the process. With these Mondays with Mandy, I'm just kind of introducing you to a little concept at a time. But in the online bootcamp, I take you through everything, like how do you transfer the drawing? You know, what's the process? What's the paint handling? Where do you put the paint on the palette? And then you get feedback and critiques from me as you go. So basically, I'm your bumper rails and bowling. I don't let you do anything stupid, right? So I just keep you like on the right track, and you just keep. If you do the work and you keep going, then you get a nice painting at the end. Okay, so there are some questions about chroma. Chroma is relative, right? So this green down here is a pretty neutralized green. This orange in the skin tone is a neutralized orange, but it's actually more chromatic than this green. It's also darker in value. If you really want to deep dive in color theory, the School of Atelier Arts has worksheets that drill you on color theory. So if you're like, value chroma hue, I'm not sure, we have a set of 50 worksheets available on our website that you can purchase. And if you go through that drill, like all 50 drills, all 50 pages of those drills, it'll really help you understand how to identify value, chroma, and hue separately. And then we combine value and chroma and hue, et cetera, et cetera. Ellen's saying that she'd really like to do a master copy. I have no idea where to start. So that would be very cool. Yes. Well, join the boot camp, Ellen. I know that you are on the fence and that you're very close, but like I can tell that that's your next step in your painting. Like you take it to the next level. You can watch videos and learn a lot, but what really is valuable about atelier training is that you get my eye. You get the eye of an atelier trained artist to hone your eye. And that's something you have forever. When someone teaches you how to see better, you see better forever. It's something you have the entire rest of your life. It's one of the coolest, most magical things. Oh, and we have a worksheet enthusiast in the chat. Yes, absolutely. Check out the worksheets if you really want to master color theory. It's a great way to isolate that skill, practice it, and then bring it back into your painting practice. Yeah, I feel you, Helen. Well, the great thing about the boot camp, it's $500 a month, but it's monthly, right? So we have students that will come for a month or two and then take a little bit of time off and then come for a month or two and take some time off. So because all the projects are geared to the individual, you can come and go as your life allows you. I tried so hard to set up this whole school so that serious students can paint seriously when they have the time to dedicate to it, and that it also gives room for the rest of your life, because most of us can't quit our jobs and move across the country for atelier training, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have access to it. You can. Excellent. Yes, sometimes we need that support in our families to pursue our dreams, financially, emotionally. I don't know anybody that gets through atelier training without crying in their car at least once. So get all your support in a row. Yes, preach. Yes, I will preach. I will preach about atelier training all day long. I've dedicated my life to sharing this knowledge with others, and I know how life-changing it can be to finally have the skills that you always dreamed of, that you wanted. And it's not some magic. Like, you don't need a talent fairy to bop you on the head. What you need is an instructor that has the skill set that you're trying to learn. So many people take an art class with an art instructor that doesn't have the skill set that they're hoping to learn, right? If you don't take an art class with an atelier trained instructor that you want to paint like Velasquez, they're not going to be able to help you get there. But then students think that, oh, it's them. Like, oh, I just don't have it. I'm not capable. No, you are not the problem. Having access to an atelier trained instructor is the problem. And they are somewhat difficult to come by because atelier training nearly died by the 1980s. But the good news is that you have one. I am here right now for free on YouTube every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And you can learn with me and learn these nearly lost skills. And it's not magic. It's just access to an atelier trained instructor. And then the online painting bootcamp, what's so beneficial about that is that I can actually give you feedback, right? So when you're watching the YouTube, you're getting one-way instruction, which is good. I'm hoping you're learning things that you didn't know before. But what's really going to accelerate you is that you need my eye, right? You need to borrow my eye to help you stay on track to go in the right direction. And it doesn't have to be my eye, but it needs to be an eye that's trained better than yours. And don't train with somebody that doesn't have the skill set that you actually want. If there's any advice I could give you, it's that. Welcome, Rob. So good to have you. I love that we have such a nice community in the chat. Okay, so we are lace painting. I better get back to it. But, sometimes we paint something by painting what's around it. That's a common technique that atelier trained artists will use in an eye, for example. They'll paint what's around it instead of the eye itself, because sometimes, when we're thinking in our head lace or eye, we do dumb things, right? But if we just paint everything around it, then it just suddenly emerges. And that's what we're going to do with the lace today. So I'm going to mix up this kind of neutralized orange here. It's a ready orange. It's a medium value. It's slightly neutralized, so I'm letting some of this dirty green into my orange. And, I feel pretty close on that. Let's just put a note down and see how we feel. All right, so that's feeling a little dark and a little chromatic, but luckily if I add white to it, it solves both of those problems, because white both will neutralize and lighten the color. I think we need a touch more yellow. Just a little warmer in there, a little lighter, a little warmer. There we go. So these aren't necessarily big adjustments. It's little things, right? So I'm asking myself all the time, what's the value chroma hue of what I'm trying to paint and how close am I to the value chroma hue, to what I'm observing. Okay, so I'm going to lighten this a little bit more. All right, it got a little chalked out. It needs a little bit more yellow, a little bit more warmth, a little more chroma, we would say. So I got the value lightened, but we lost the chroma. And now I've darkened it, but I have the chroma, so it's a little bit of push and pull here to get both. I want it to read chromatic and light and value. And we're getting a little closer now. All right, and we have something that's darker and warm, but still neutralized down here. But not gray. You know, some people will like turn humans into zombies so quickly just by graying things out. There's quite a bit of color in the skin tones. And there's some shifts between warm and cool. So we have some warmth in the shadow, and then we have a little bit of green in the midtone here. Pulling out. Now, this is our first pass. You know, typically with a master copy, we're going to do 2 or 3 passes. So we're just trying to get our best guess down in approximately the right place. And our next pass is for really refining it. You know, you don't want one part of your painting to get too far ahead of everything else going on in your painting. That got a little neutralized, a little bit of chroma in there. Okay, so you know, it's really tempting. You have to maintain a discipline because it's really tempting to be like, oh, I'm just going to connect it to the beard, and then the beard needs connected to the face, and then the next thing you know, you're painting the whole face when what you intended to paint today was actually the lace. So there's a few good questions in the chat here. So for atelier artists, when doing their own paintings, do you do the drawings first and then color studies before starting the main work? Often that's the case, especially the way I teach in the online painting boot camp. Actually, you can see here this drapery. Let me move this aside. So this is a project I'm teaching in the boot camp right now. It's exclusively for boot camp students, and this lesson is only going to be there until June 1st. So if you're interested in drapery, I encourage you to join us before June 1st because this unit's going to disappear out of the boot camp then. But right now I am working live. So I'm here on Mondays, but Tuesday through Friday, I'm with my boot camp students doing this extra bonus lesson on drapery. So you can see that I'm doing the drawing first. Then we're going to do what's called a wipeout. It's a form of an underpainting. And then we're going to do something similar to what I'm doing with the master copy, where, you know, we're doing a full color direct painting on top of it. So hopefully that answers your question, Rob. Okay, so there's so many good questions in the chat. Like, are you sketching just a sketch with an undertone of sorts? So this is a good question. You can put different degrees. Let me push this back. You can do different degrees of drawing in a painting, but eventually you have to have a refined drawing if you want to refine painting. So the real question is, do you do all of the drawing thinking at this stage, or do you kind of block it in loosely and do more of the drawing thinking in a final pass, right? Both are legitimate ways to work. I really encourage my students when they're new to atelier training to do as much of their drawing thinking as they can before they even start the painting. And that way they can just really focus on value, chroma, hue. It's kind of like doing a master copy if you set your drawing up really well. So that's why we've already spent, 4 days on this drawing so far in the boot camp. And it's a pretty simple drawing because we're being very slow and very accurate. Okay. So there is a question about a color study, and it is common too, even before doing a master copy, that you can do something called a poster study. And the other day I was guest hosting for Eric Rhodes on Art School Live, and I did a poster study of a landscape. So if you're curious what a poster study is, it's a small study of a painting that just helps you organize the big ideas. So typically in Atelier, you would do a block-in drawing, very careful drawing. You might do a little mini painting, like a 4-inch by 5-inch painting, just blocking out your big ideas, and then do an underpainting and paint this. That's a pretty typical progression for an atelier. Okay, good questions in the chat today. Okay. All right, so we're painting lace, so I'm gonna push just back over. That was a little bit of a side quest here. But I want to be careful about my drawing even as I'm painting. And I see some areas, where, I'm losing my drawing a little bit. And I just want to reestablish. There's a little bit of a magic trick that atelier trained artists will do where they develop a memory, a drawing memory, so that even if their paint actually accidentally overlaps something that they didn't intend for it to overlap, that they have this memory of where it goes in their heads. Also, if you drew it once, you can always draw it again, right? If you found it the first time, you'll be able to find it again. So, sometimes students panic when there's no need for panic, right? But that just comes through experience. Okay, so I'm working on this area here. And there's basically a gradient that's happening between the neck and here. It's a really soft edge happening. It gets neutral, and the lace, if I think of it as lace, I'll paint this lace as white. But if I think of it as, ooh, there's a gradient from warm to cool going across here because our lace is transparent, all of a sudden I see the color in the lace, and it is actually quite colorful, especially on this side. Ooh, I didn't mean to put that in my paint. I got a little green. I need to neutralize it. I got a little dark. It's going to be a little lighter over here. And that's too light. So I'm just going through value, chroma, hue. So at first I was looking at the hue. It's a little bit more on the green side than it is the pink side. Then it was too dark. That's the value. And the chroma is somewhat neutralized here. I did lose my little dark. This little kind of corner of dark is what's helping the whole thing read here. Okay, so do you see how we've built this kind of soft edge transitioning from the flesh tone to the lace, and there isn't a harsh line anywhere, right? It truly is a gradient. There's a tiny bit of a green, a peachy green on this far edge here. That's just kind of the far edge of the transition. You can spend a lot of time, on various areas of your painting, but try not to get too sucked into one area. I always try to encourage my students, have a goal, have a painting goal for what you're trying to achieve on this particular day. And today the painting goal is the lace. So I don't want to get too sucked in to flesh tones. That's for a different day. Okay. I just want it to read close enough. I say that while getting sucked into a flesh tone, right? This is, this is why you start a project and you're like, oh, I'm going to paint the lace today. And then sometimes the project tells you what's going to happen that day. All right, so I see some more questions in the chat. So I've been setting up a still life to paint, my first one. And I think I will draw it first in charcoal and a poster study. I think that's a great idea. Absolutely. The more thinking you do before you get it in your head that you're working on your final painting, the better off you're going to be. Oh, okay. So I see that you're setting up an advanced subject, a Chinese theme with calligraphy set and other things on red velvet and brocade. Yes, you are taking on a very big challenge. But one thing that I encourage you to do, and what I teach my students to do in the Atelier Painting Bootcamp, is, if you're setting up red silk, but you've never painted red silk before, see if you can find some paintings that the old masters did with red silk and do a little poster study of that painting. It'll help you so much with how to think about looking at something in the 3D world and translating it to 2D. In the painting bootcamp, I really encourage students to take on modest projects at first and learn how to do them the atelier way well. A lot of times students, they want to have this wow factor, but sometimes you're doing a project to learn and sometimes you're doing a project to make art. And if you can accept that some projects are learning projects, like the whole sphere painting that I did on the School of Atelier Arts channel that you can check out on our channel, it's not that anybody's looking at a sphere and being like, that's high art, but doing that sphere will teach you so much about painting, controlling your painting, controlling the form in a painting. So, not every project is high art, especially if you want to learn to paint at the atelier level. Sometimes it's technique projects. And Jessica's saying, oh, I'm so glad you're doing a preview of your program. I have no idea. That's why I started doing it, because everybody who joins my boot camp, they're like, there are people that are like, I'm going to be here for years, Mandy. You can't get rid of me, right? But sometimes it's just like you're not sure what it is, especially if you haven't had a lot of exposure to the painting boot camp or to atelier training generally. And that's in part why I started this. I realized that there's a lot of people looking for this training, but they don't know exactly what it is, or they can't quite put their finger on what it is or what they're looking for. So I really hope that these videos help all of you out there that are looking to learn how to paint at a higher level and giving you a pathway, whether that's through the painting bootcamp, whether that's setting up your own project and doing your poster studies and doing your drawings. You'll learn something either way. The difference between being enrolled in an atelier versus doing it on your own is the efficiency of what you learn, right? But it's a journey for everybody. I tell my students all the time in the bootcamp, I'm not teaching you how to paint. I'm teaching you how to teach yourself how to paint efficiently, right? So it's just a matter of how much time you want to invest versus, the do it alone route versus the support of an atelier trained instructor route. Yes. And it's true, Jessica, like $500 a month is a commitment. And it's not a commitment to take lightly, but it's also one of the most affordable ways that currently exist to get this training from instructors that are really hard to come by, right? This training is not all that common. And it's hard to find an instructor that resonates with you, that you feel like you can learn with. So if you think that I can help you, we offer a 100% money back guarantee on our boot camp. So let's say you pay the $500, you're still a little scared, you're not sure, and it's not right for you, there's no risk. You get your full money back for up to 30 days. So I really encourage people. I try to make it as easy as possible to take that step, because yes, the $500 is scary, but the real fear in my experience with students is that they're afraid that they're going to spend this money and they're still not going to be able to learn what they want to know. But what's funny is that people stay because they are learning what they want to know, right? And I offer this 100% money back guarantee because I know that you're going to learn what you want to know in the boot camp. I know that I can solve this problem for you, that oh, your heart wants to draw and paint at this level. You don't know how. How do you get there? I try to make it as easy as possible. And Ellen's saying, for me, everything is a learning project. So doing studies, absolutely. It's so true, Ellen. Watching people paint, you can learn so much. But even when you watch people paint, I really encourage you to try following along as best you can at home. So, after this lesson today, try being, try, this is Alaska's master copy. You can print one off of line, do a little poster study, right? So apply what I'm teaching you. The more immediate application that you do, the more learning you'll get out of this completely for free, right? So Jessica knows somebody going to Grand Central. I love the Grand Central Academy. I used to run a nonprofit, and Jacob Collins and the Shapiro Fund were very generous to that nonprofit. It's a great school, and I bet your friend is learning so much. But yeah, going to a full-time in-person atelier is another level of expense, right? I tried to position my atelier to be for the people that are serious about taking their training to the next level, but don't have the ability or means to necessarily move across the country and train full-time. So I promise you consistent progress in your art and coaching twice a week. And, you can text me through our online course platform in between for, extra information. But it's trying to fill that space of, okay, you aren't 21 and can quit your job and live out of your car to go to the atelier training. What are your options? So this is where I've tried to position my school. Definitely great people there. So okay, we're painting lace and we haven't painted any part of the lace yet. Has anybody noticed this? Okay, I guess we painted this one transition here that actually has to transition lighter in value. And it has a little bit more darkness in this one little spot down here. Okay, so I'm going to fill in this as best I can. It does have some dry brushing on it. That would be kind of a second pass situation, but I can directly match the color to the best of my ability. It's a little bit on the neutrally peach side. Again, if some of these descriptives are, you're like, what did you just say? A neutrally peach? We do have some videos on the School of Atelier Arts YouTube channel that go through value chroma hue, and we do have those worksheets that are a great primer for practicing color theory. Just trying to get this covered here. This isn't white. This is like a value 2 neutralized peach. Peach being an orange of sorts. That was too chromatic. We're going to neutralize it slightly. It's feeling a little dark here, but is it feeling dark because I haven't covered this, or is it actually too dark in value? And I actually think when I think of it in those terms, it's too light. But whenever I struggle with something like that, I try to just get the rest of my canvas covered. Like by getting the rest of this lace painted in, it's going to give me better information, right? The white of a canvas can throw off the way you see so much. Okay, so this is a little bit warm and a little bit light. So I'm going to cool it down and I'm going to darken it. So not a huge value shift, but a little bit. And of course, if I lose my drawing, I need to spend some time refining my drawing. And we also have kind of some rough edges in here. that were originally created on his with dry brush that we're going to partially mimic with direct painting and then on a second pass get into. Kind of have a soft edge here. And we definitely need some more clarity in the drawing here. Do you see how this has become genericized? The way that this lace is going to really look and feel like lace is if we get the shape right. We talked in part 1 of this series of how there aren't little holes in here. The illusion of the lace is coming from the soft edge and the shape being specific in here. So the more specific we get our shape and the more we match the edge work here, the more the lace is going to emerge. Paper towel. Okay, so time for some shape work. So I'm going in with my darks here. You don't want to genericize. You want to be very specific on what each shape is actually doing. How wide is this piece? You don't want to just make all of the curves the same. That's a really common student mistake. Asking yourself how long versus how wide something is. And then in the boot camp with that drapery painting, one thing that we've been spending a lot of time talking about is we don't draw in isolation. Whatever we're doing here has to relate to this, it has to relate to this, and has to relate to this, right? So we're always thinking, how does the point of this relate to the point of that? Sometimes artists, they put 3 strokes down and we feel like, oh, we can do that, right? But then when it comes down to it, we can't do it and we don't know what they're doing that we aren't. And it's that they're not putting a stroke down just thinking in isolation here. They're putting a stroke down thinking about the whole. Okay, this background is actually a little bit light, possibly because it was sinking in, possibly because it was originally painted too light. That's a really common thing to have happen, painting the background too light when you're painting on a white canvas. There was no underpainting in this particular master copy. When I teach in the online boot camp, I do teach an underpainting technique, but I try not to be too dogmatic. I try to teach you methods that work, but there's reasons why you would want an underpainting, and there are also reasons at times that you don't want an underpainting. And the reason I didn't do an underpainting here is because there's actually quite a bit of chroma in the skin tones of this particular painting. And if I did like a raw umber underpainting, it's going to really neutralize everything underneath there. And I didn't want that. Rob's being super kind in the chat, saying Mandy makes it look so much easier than it is. This is what atelier training achieves. Yes, because I have to tell you, Rob, that I cried in my car all the time getting my atelier training. It was hard fought. But you know what? As a background as an educator, because I was a licensed teacher before I found atelier training, sometimes in some ateliers, like it being hard, it's almost like considered a rite of passage. Like, oh yeah, it has to be hard or you're not doing it. But as a teacher, I don't believe that. I think every skill can be broken down into manageable steps for students, right? So one thing that I think really makes my school stand out from other ateliers out there is just this education theory that's woven into everything that I teach. I really break things down to an extraordinary degree. I always want my students to know exactly what they need to do next. I don't want my students to have those experiences where they're like frustrated and angry and they don't know what to do, right? And that they're just making a mess on their painting because they don't have clear direction on what their next step is. So, at the end of every critique, I make each of my students say, tell me exactly what it is that they need to do next. So I give them the critique, I tell them what I think they need to do, and then I have them tell it back to me so I know that they know exactly what they need to do next. Okay. Yeah, I believe in teachers too, Jessica. They're doing some pretty important work in society right now, for sure. I mean, they always have. I shouldn't imply that it's a new phenomenon, but I was still teaching in the public schools in the COVID era, and what a difficult, challenging time, to be an instructor. I have so much love and respect for the teachers, giving the best to our students under really trying circumstances. Okay, I'm kind of getting sucked in over here because it needs to be darker, and that's affecting my lace, so I can't let it go, right? It needs to be addressed. But I don't have to do the whole second pass right now up here, right? I can just get the part by the lace and save this other part for another day. I'm dry brushing a little bit just to get it down in here, just to change the value to what I want it to be. Dry brushing is kind of cheating. Like really what I need to do is mix the color, but I just don't want to take the time to repaint this whole background right now, so I'm cheating. But I do want to, while I have this color, better define, what a great opportunity to work on this drawing here, and being very careful. In here. I don't want a halo effect, right? So I'm trying, even though there's some darks in here, I want to make sure that this background doesn't feel like it has an outline around my subject. Sometimes it's really helpful to name a shape. So right now I'm looking at this section and I kind of see the profile of a man with a really, really large nose and then kind of pursed lips and a very big chin here, right? So like brow, nose, lips, and elongated chin, high cheekbone. Sometimes, giving ourselves this idea will help us accurately shape, create our shapes. So I'm looking at this shape with that in mind, and I see that I can kind of cut in a little bit here. This is going to be the nose. And that I need a little bit more fatness down here. And I'm still looking at this angle between here. It's likely that this is going to have a touch more. It got a little small down here. See, I made the mistake of starting to jump. So I still want to relate it over here, but I don't want to start working on another drawing problem before I resolve my first drawing problem. That's how you get lost in a painting. That's how you end up crying in your car. Okay, so we're starting to kind of piece out the areas, kind of define the nose part slightly. And again, this is our first pass. We want to get it as most like as we can, and then on the next pass, even more like. And then we just improve a little bit each time. But I'm starting to get the big idea of the shape now, which is what I wanted. Okay, this collar situation. Just checking the oh, okay, so there's a question in the chat. What does painting loose mean? Yeah, so we don't want to paint sloppy. So to me, painting loose does not mean painting sloppy. It doesn't mean, ooh, do what you feel. It means that I'm looking at the bigger ideas. So for example, there's a lot of up and down going on in here, but I'm just trying to get the overall big shape. I'm getting a nose and a chin, right, in here. And I can refine this more, but I'm just getting the big shape first. And then on the next pass, I would refine it. So getting the big shape is painting loosely, right? It's not refining the shape. That's a great question. All right, we're almost out of time today, but I just really wanted to adjust this a touch. So much of the skin color is actually in the collar here because of that transparency. And this line is a little harsh in here. All right, this definitely needs some more work, but this isn't a skin tone painting day. This is a lace painting day, so stay focused. Okay, so we have some of the warms and cools in here. Oops. We have the big shape. I'm doing something called knocking back edges. So I painted a little thickly. I tend to paint a little more thickly than I want to when I'm thinking about shape and I'm not thinking about so much about the paint I'm laying down. So if I have any strong ridges, I want to just knock them back so that on my next pass, I can cover them if need be. If you have a lot of ridges in your paint, it makes it really difficult to put a second pass on top of it. So I'm just cleaning up a little bit before we end for today. Okay, so we've now been painting 2 days. We have a little bit of lace. It's starting to emerge. I hope you can see too that neither one of these is white. Look how middle value and neutralized especially this back part of the collar is, right? Because we're getting so much of the skin tone bounced in there. It's further away from the light source, so it's going to be darker in value. And also just by getting this painting around it, right? So by getting these darks around it, it helps the lace read as white, even though it's like a value 2 to 3 now, right? So if you think white, you'll never be able to paint lace. But if you just see it as a value chroma hue next to another value chroma hue and you let lace go out of your brain, then you can be quite successful. Okay. All right. So that is going to be it for today, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. I do have a gift for you all today in case you haven't received it yet. So let me pull this up. So this is a free lesson plan on values. So if you want to practice values, keying values is a great way to do that. It's a really simple lesson. So for those of you who are art teachers, this is a great lesson to leave for your subs on a day off. And it's also a great lesson to help students start thinking about how to key values, how to think about values in a big way. Okay, so that is available for you. I hope you'll download that. Please make sure to like and subscribe to this channel. We do these free lessons every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and lovely having all of you here. If you can't watch it live, they are available on our YouTube channel to watch at your leisure. So thank you all for joining us today. It's so wonderful to have a delightful group of students that takes art seriously. It's so wonderful. You're very welcome, RC. Thanks for being here today. Thanks, Jessica, Ellen, Rob, all who joined in today. And I look forward to seeing you next Monday, or maybe in the boot camp. Let's see if you're ready. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.